Today we're looking at these two cameras that I've wanted to try and compare for quite a few years. The Minolta TC-1 and the Fujifilm Klasse, which in this case is called the Rollei AFM35 because it's a rebadge for the German market, but it's basically the Fuji. Two of the most sought after compact film cameras, 3 rolls each, 3 of the same rolls, Kodak Ektar 100, same light, roughly the same settings on both of these cameras, and by the end of the video I'll know which one I'll keep. Welcome back to the channel, I'm Ron and I try, buy and talk about cameras. Both old and new, but mostly old, mostly compact, and sometimes a little bit decrepit. So if you enjoy real-world camera reviews from someone who actually shoots with these cameras, then consider subscribing because it really helps a small channel like this grow. All right, first I have to mention the prices that these are going for because they're definitely up there. Current prices are around 1,000 to 1,200 US dollars or euros for the TC-1 and 800 to 900 for the Fuji. That's serious money for 25 to 30-year-old cameras. Now let's go through a quick overview of both of these cameras. Let's see what they're about. The Minolta, released in 1996, is a compact legend, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this still holds the title for the smallest full-frame 35mm film camera ever made. I will say it is essentially the same size as the Fuji Tiara. Perhaps it's a hair smaller. I don't really see it. But according to the internet, this is the smallest. Regardless, it doesn't, I mean, you know, they're basically the same. Now, most people tend to lust after the equally expensive, outrageously expensive Contax T2, but I was always much more intrigued by the Minolta TC-1. It's always been my grail camera, my grail compact film camera, if there is such a thing. Like the T2, it has a titanium build and lots of manual controls, but the TC-1 comes with a 28mm f3.5 lens with its unique circular apertures, which you can select using this little mechanical aperture ring here that they somehow managed to squeeze on this microscopic lens. It's amazing. And then we have the original Fujifilm Klasse, which was released in 2001. And again, was sold in some countries as the Rollei AFM35. I think I've said that like 3 times now already, but it keeps being confusing. It's slightly newer than the TC-1 and definitely a little bit chunkier. The Klasse also comes with a 38mm lens as opposed to the TC-1's 28. Both are aperture priority cameras that give you lots of manual controls over your images, as well as manual and autofocus. Okay, let's have a look at the side-by-side image quality. I'll share some of my favorite shots taken with each of these cameras later, but first let's have a look at how they handle tricky lighting situations. So both were able to deliver decent or sometimes very good shots in high contrast or strong backlight, but the Fuji was definitely more consistent and very well balanced with its exposure overall. Interestingly though, in this last sunset shot, the Minolta won. You can do it. I do prefer the more traditional sun star from the Fuji, whereas the circular aperture on the Minolta gives the sun a more, I don't know, a bit more of a boring glow in my opinion. So here in this shot, which was taken at a winery near Healdsburg, in case you were interested, you can see that the TC-1 blew out the highlights while the Fuji handled this a lot better. There's still blue in the sky, for example. Another thing I noticed is that in these trickier lighting conditions, the TC-1, more often than the Fuji, it didn't quite nail focus. We'll talk more about autofocus and overall sharpness in a bit, but it was definitely more noticeable in high contrast scenes. And what you'll also notice, and you'll see a lot more of them later on, is that the TC-1 is suffering from some serious light leaks. Both the red-orangey leaks are coming from the back, most likely, and they'll probably be able to fix that. But unfortunately, there also seem to be some leaks coming in from the front, and that will be a whole lot harder, if not impossible, to fix. Now, I won't let these light leaks affect my assessment of the Minolta's image quality. I can't hold a few light leaks against a 30-year-old camera. I will, however, hold it against the guy who sold me this without informing me. I mean, was he hoping I wouldn't notice? Look at these leaks. We'll cover overall sharpness next, but first, autofocus. And to be honest, it's much the same story here as with the exposure. The Fuji rarely missed focus, very rarely, whereas the Minolta's autofocus hit rate was more on par with a point-and-shoot like the Olympus Mu 2, which isn't great considering the price. When it comes to overall sharpness, both offer sharp images especially for decades-old compact film cameras. And to be honest, sharpness in film is a bit overrated anyway, in my opinion. So it's not really a deal breaker for me. I will say it's always a bit tricky comparing a wider lens to, in this case, a 38mm lens, because you're essentially a bit more zoomed out of your subject. Regardless, hello? Regardless, I say the difference in sharpness between the two is clear enough for me to call a winner the Fuji. Okay, vignetting, not necessarily a fair comparison. Again, a wider lens almost always shows more vignetting, and I don't mind a bit of vignetting at all, but unsurprisingly, the Minolta shows significantly more vignetting than the Fuji. The TC-1 is really an amazing feat of engineering and design. From the ingenious and intuitive implementation of that little aperture ring, it's so satisfying as well. Anyway, from that aperture ring to the little rocker switch at the top to cycle through different settings, it's all in the right place. It's made from the right high quality materials, and it looks amazing. And despite its tiny size, everything is in the exact right place, so it handles very well. Yeah, it's great. Despite the fact that I was just raving about the TC-1, I personally find the Fuji even more pleasing to hold. Mostly because of its more human-sized or human hand-sized dimensions and its rounded, rubberized grip. However, the manual focus dial is kind of lost on me. Don't really care for it. And the aperture dial does mean that you effectively have to cycle through multiple clicks before you're ready to shoot. For example, if you want to shoot at f16, it's 7 clicks. It's not ideal. Now, you're likely better off just shooting in program mode at that point, but still, don't like it that much. I'm not the biggest fan of the Minolta's small viewfinder, but it does display vital information like focus distance and shutter speed. The Fuji shows you nothing but some confusing LEDs blinking whenever you're asking the camera to do something that it doesn't agree with. Having said that, the Fuji's viewfinder is pretty big and very clear, unlike the Minolta's viewfinder, which has gathered more dust in 30 years than Tutankhamun's belly button in 5,000 years. That's a bit gross, but it's true. Can't even like. Okay, before I share my final conclusion and some of my favorite images from each of these, let's go over some of the potential alternatives. Now, on the upper end, we have cameras like the Contax T2 or the Nikon TI cameras. They're all titanium build, lots of manual controls, equally outrageously priced. And then in the mid-range, we have the Fujifilm Tiara, which I think spiritually is kind of in the same league as the TC-1 with its super compact design and mostly metal build. And this actually produces super sharp images and can still be had under 300 US dollars or euros. I think this is one of the best mid-range compacts that you can still buy for, especially for that price. Check out my full review on this one. And on the lower end of the prices, so maybe up to, let's say, 150 US dollars, the undefeatable Olympus XA, perhaps the quintessential compact film camera. And it's hard to beat this one if you're looking for a small camera with lots of manual controls. So here we are. Both of these cameras are great, but one of them just suits me a little bit better. And I do think objectively, one shoots slightly better pictures as well. One is ultra tiny, the other one a little bit chunky, but still very pleasant to hold. One is a 28mm and one is a 38mm. And for the way I shoot, a 28mm and a 38mm actually perfectly complement each other on a trip. So perfect, maybe I should just keep them both. Well, for now, yes, because I want to do some more side-by-side reviews with other cameras. But in the long run, I'd say the Fuji stays and the Minolta goes. There's just something very pleasing about the Fuji's handling and the consistent images it delivers. Let me know in the comments below if you agree, or perhaps you've had a completely different experience with the Minolta and I just messed up or bought a lemon. And if you'd like to see how either of these perform in even more detail, I'll be doing full reviews of each of these soon. So make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Okay, bye.